I should really have some background music. I really should. Really should have some background music for this. Then we can start the show with some background music. Maybe I'll get my boy Ryan Adam Wells to write a little theme ditty for the show. We got 30 seconds. Get your drinks, boys and girls, children of all ages. Get your drinks and let's make sure that we are ready to start. Because in 10 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 15 seconds. No, now it's 10 seconds. Hell, I'm not even paying close enough attention. It is time for the Old Humble Whiskey Happy Hour. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, children of all ages, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. It is the last day of February. It is February 28, 2022. 5 days ago, the world went crazy. And I'm here to talk about it. Let's talk. Let's chat. Let's have a word, shall we? We are. What is this? There we go. Fix that. There we go. We're at 532 subs right now. And when we get to 550 subscribers, I'll give away a bottle of whiskey. I am your host, the Old Humble Guy. I'm with the Old Humble Distilling Company. In fact, I own the Old Humble Distilling Company, but when I am dressed as such, I am the chief spokesperson and media, I don't know, media face, I guess you'd call that. Anyway, I know we should get a better face, right? Somebody who's not so ugly. But yeah, I could fix that by just moving this like right here. There. That makes me look a little bit better, doesn't it? Anyway, tonight I am drinking our special reserve. Pour whatever you want. It is your bottle. It is your glass. I mean, it's your happy hour, man. Enjoy yourself. Relax. It's been a long day for me personally. I've been busy. I've had shit to do. And, now it's the end of the day. It's 10 p.m. Central Daylight Time in Humble, Texas. I don't know, is it Daylight Time or is it Standard Time? Hey Siri, is it Daylight Time or Standard Time right now?
Okay, I found this on the web for is it Daylight Time or Standard Time right now. Check it out.
November 6th is when Standard Time began. Hey Siri, when does Daylight Time run in the United States? Between what months?
Here's what I found from webexhibits.org.
Daylight Savings
Daylight
Time.
Saving Time, DST, is observed in the United States from 2 a.m. on the first Sunday in April until 2 a.m. on the last Sunday in October.
Got it. So when we spring forward into Daylight Savings Time. We fall back into Standard Time. That makes sense. Okay. So it is currently 10 p.m. Central Standard Time here in Humble, Texas. Pardon me. And, like I said, last Wednesday, I'm about to start my happy hour show on Wednesday. Thursday, I was under the weather and could not do the show. You hear the cough. It's gotten better since Thursday. Thursday, I could barely talk. Saturday, I was back at it. I had my live stream Saturday from the distillery. Was back on this morning. Feeling very nearly 100% this morning. Still very nearly 100% tonight. I've got to get up early in the morning to go work the polls. Because tomorrow is election day here in the United States. Well, here in Texas, at least, it's election day. It's a primary. It's the spring primary, first primary or one of the first primaries of the year. The parties are selecting their nominees to run in the November election. It's a very early primary. But as an election worker, it's basically our opportunity to make sure all the systems are operating well. So it's it may not be that critical and that important to the voters, because you're not voting on a final decision. There's no ballot measures or anything like that on the ballot. There might be some local issues on the ballot, but there's no statewide issues on the ballot. You're not actually voting for who's going to win the elections and all that stuff. You're just voting on the nominees who will run for the next, 6 months. March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. 8 months. Holy jeez. We'll be running for the next 8 months in preparation for the November election. And tomorrow night, after I come home, I'm going to do a happy hour that talks about the political systems and economic systems, how they're related, how they're different. You can be a democratic country with a socialist economy. You can be a fascist country. You can't be a fascist country with a socialist economy. Those are incompatible. But you can be, it's the different philosophies and how they work within the economics and how you get to there from where you're at. It's going to be a fun conversation because I'm a systems and logistics guy. I'm not really a political science guy. I know the definitions and how they work together, but I'm really more of a systems and logistics guy, and the way that they interact to get you from point A to point B to point C. It's really it fascinates me, and it's fun to think about, and it's fun to think of. And thinking of these things is the way you protect what you've got, because if you don't know how what you have will devolve, you don't know how to protect what you've got. It's important to think about stuff like that. But that's for tomorrow. Tomorrow night is for tomorrow night. And it really means I'm stalling for tonight, because tonight I really wanted to talk about how the world went crazy on Wednesday. Because last Wednesday I was starting my happy hour. The happy hour last Wednesday was the math behind the confirmation of the geometry of our Earth. Our Earth is round. We know it's a spheroid shape. We know this. We know the size of it. We know the size of the Earth. We know the shape of the Earth. We know the size of the moon. We know the shape of the moon. We know the distance that the moon is from Earth. And we know the distance the sun is from the Earth. And we know the size of the sun, all because of geometry and basic middle school math. And that's what we talked about last Thursday. If you want to go check it out, check out episode number 26, I think, from last Wednesday. The math is fascinating. And I didn't even go into the deep, calculations of the math. I just like, this is how we did it. Here it is. This is how you did it. And, I think I plugged in some numbers to my calculator and showed it off. But, that's cool. But as I started that show, like literally as I was beginning that show, it's 10 o'clock here in the United States. 10 p.m. Central Standard Time in Humble, Texas. Like an hour previous to that, I think it was like an hour prior to that. Maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours. Vladimir Putin decided to launch his full-scale invasion of Ukraine. We had seen it coming. We knew it was on its way. He had telegraphed it. Our government had said this is what they're planning to do. Like literally laid the playbook out in front of them, said this is what they're planning to do, this is how they're planning to do it, this is when they're planning to do it in the next 24, 48 hours. We know it's coming. And he did it. And we know he did it. I mean, we've been following the report since Wednesday, late Wednesday, all through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The whole fucking world has gone crazy. It's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. There's a lot of screen above me. I'm laid back and relaxed. I'm just sitting here chilling in my chair. And a whole bunch of screen above me. It's been crazy. It's been crazy because we've gotten all these awesome reports of our Ukrainian heroes, our brethren over there fighting for freedom, fending off the Russian attack. The Russian attack has not gone as smoothly as the Russians wanted it to go. And that's encouraging. most people here in the United States seem to be standing in solidarity with Russia. There's a handful. It seems, that are not siding with Ukraine, that are siding with Russia. It is very. It goes against what seems to be what I understand is our national philosophy of self determination and country and defense of freedom, defense of democratic institutions, defense of liberal democracies. It seems to go against those principles, and I know the United States hasn't always lived up to those principles. Don't at me. Don't whatever. I get it. We don't always live up to those principles, and we definitely didn't always live up to those principles during the Cold War. We backed despots. We backed dictators. We overthrew unfriendly dictators. Excuse me. And replaced them with friendly dictators. And sometimes that blew back in our face. And then you have Iran. The United States is not getting directly involved in this conflict, which is good, because we don't really want to have our airplanes shooting down Russian airplanes and vice versa, because that kind of escalation tends to lead to nuclear wars when you have two nuclear powers on either end of the battlefield. I don't know what would actually get the United States involved in this particular conflict, and I think it's probably a better thing. I tend to be reluctant to cheer on the notion of sending our boys and men into harm's way. I'd rather not if we don't have to. I would rather them defend our territory and our allies' territory than to go attacking other countries. Notable exceptions, but it's been on my mind. To say the very least, it has been on my mind. It has been front and center on my mind right here since before Wednesday. The drums of war have been beating for weeks now. We've known about the military buildup on the borders of Ukraine, Belarus, and Ukraine, and Crimea. When Crimea was seized back in 2000, when was it? 2014. And this low-grade civil war that's been kind of going on in the eastern portions of Ukraine. But what worries me significantly is that what's going on isn't so much. It seems to me, and of course, I'm no geopolitical expert. I'm not a political scientist. I'm not a geopolitical expert. I'm a game theory guy and a systems and logistics guy. I've said that before. I'll say it again. It seems that the end goal isn't necessarily to. Well, it's not a mission of conquest. It doesn't seem. Cheers to chat. Who do we got over here? Lazy Nate. What's up, my man? It seems to me that the end game isn't. There's a cat in your pants. Well, that's unfortunate, my friend. It seems to me that the end game isn't so much a conquest and annexation, although that may be the case. Conquest and annexation. I don't know. It seems more like the end game is replacement of the government with a friendly puppet government, like what they have in Belarus, in order to prevent the westward leanings of Ukraine. And to that end, it can be a full-on, you broke it, you buy it type of situation with those guys. Russia doesn't play by the same rules that we do. Putin may be looking at it like, if I can't have it, nobody can. I don't know how we would respond if. I find it hard to even say it out loud. I don't know how we would respond if he nuked a city in Ukraine. But that would bring them to their knees pretty quick, I presume. Who we got here? Jonah fucking Russian troll removed. Bye. Yo, John Jacob, what's up in the house, my man? I don't know. But see, here's the thing. It wouldn't even come to that. I don't think. I don't even think it would require that. I don't think it would require leveling a city like that. Because what concerns me more is uh, the Grozny solution. The way Putin put down the rebellion in Chechnya is, if memory serves, and it may not be completely accurate, but if memory serves, it's like 2008, 2009, somewhere in this neighborhood. They basically told all the civilians, get out of the city. If you stay in the city, we're going to consider you a combatant. And then they just leveled the city. Indiscriminate bombing, indiscriminate missiles, leveled it. Just Grozny became the most destroyed city in the world. Um, and that's how they put an end to the Chechnyan rebellion. They just leveled it. And that was it. That was the end of Grozny. And then he put in his oligarch and rebuilt Grozny. Tuna's in the house. Cheers. Um, it's possible. It's possibly both. He wants to probably either eventually reunite the USSR by forming an anti-NATO style organization, probably first. Then, if he has the time, which he doesn't, absorbing them. Yeah, I mean, but there's effectively no difference between installing a puppet government and basically absorbing Ukraine into Russian territory. It's been a fierce resistance right now, but the reports today that I saw, the 40-mile column of tanks and armor and military, 40-mile column. That's literally from my house to downtown Houston and back. The whole freeway. From here to the other side of town. 40 miles. That's a lot. That's a lot. And I'm encouraged by the fight that Ukrainians have put up the first 5 days, but I'm concerned for our brothers in Ukraine because the longer it goes on, the longer they can bring more resources, they can bring more people, they can bring. I mean, you can only hold out for so long until basically there's nothing left to defend. You can continue to defend, and then it's on principle. You're just trying to turn the invaders back. But then what do you have left to defend? And at that point, mission accomplished. They're like, hey, you can have them. They're a broken shell of what they used to be. The Finns are distracting the humans from the real attack. uh, excuse me. His cough is still quite clearly lingering. Let's get the chat in the screen. Because I'm curious what y'all are thinking about it myself. Because I don't get to interact very often with other humans. Airedale squid. I mean, the stories that we're hearing of the defense and the men and women standing up. We're seeing videos on TikTok of how to restart abandoned vehicles, abandoned armor, abandoned tanks, abandoned trucks. We're seeing the Marlboro Man picking up an active landmine and tossing it off to the side of the street. We're seeing stories of the engineer that blew up the bridge to stop the Russian advance, but he wasn't able to get clear, so he ordered he ordered the bridge to get blown before he could get off the bridge, sacrificed himself to stop the Russian advance. The Ghost of Kiev, the Ghost of Kiev, the fighter ace that allegedly shot down 6 Russian jets in the first 30 hours of combat. The sweet little grandma who went up to the Russian soldier and told him to put some sunflower seeds in his pocket so that at least sunflowers will grow where he lies dead in the fields of Ukraine. I love that. That's such a scalding burn. I love it. You shouldn't be here. At least put sunflower seeds in your pocket so you leave something good behind when you die. Um, the 13 soldiers that were on Snake Island that told the Russian warship to go fuck itself. Uh, they sacrificed themselves to. I mean, they didn't hold the island. It got bombarded. They died. Uh, but the stories of heroism and strong backbones and standing up and defending your home. Um, they're the civilians all through Kiev and all the other cities, Kharkiv and uh, all the other cities where you're seeing piles and piles of Molotov cocktails, homemade Molotov cocktails. It is it's inspiring to say the very least. Um, Well, the Russians have the second or third largest army. A lot of what we count as equipment intelligence reports old. Yeah, I get that. Consider Russian military personnel hardened there. Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're seeing. A lot of the reports are that these are just conscripts. These are kids that were called up, reservists that were called up. They were told that it was the first wave, at least. We're told that they were just on exercises and training, and then they were sent into Ukraine. They're running out of fuel. They're running out of ammunition. They're surrendering. They're being told that we weren't even supposed to be here. They reverted into an episode, a scene from Clerks. We're not even supposed to be here today. And they're unequipped. They're under-equipped, under-trained. They're just a bunch of dumb kids that thought they were just going for some training exercises. And then boom, they're in war. Um, oh, they were captured, not killed. Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, well that's good news. Um, that's good news. That's good news. I stand corrected. The last report that I saw was that they were killed. Um, so good. I did not. I do not have the latest information. That's fantastic. That's good news. Um, um, and yeah, I mean, I get. I do not think that the Russian army is nearly as uh, terrifying as we make them out to be. And it seems that from the reports that I've heard out of Latvia and Lithuania, they want American soldiers on their bases with permanent bases in their NATO bases, permanent presence in their NATO bases on the borders with Russia, because Russian soldiers don't want to fight American soldiers, and I get that too. We have a professional army. Our army is larger than theirs. Our army is professional, better equipped, better, all that stuff. That doesn't mean that they don't have nukes, and that's the troublesome thing. If you've got nothing to lose, uh, what do you do next? Your last ditch effort to try and uh, put an end to stanch the losses, and that worries. That I mean, that's a legit, like, in the back of my mind, concern. Um, but I don't think it. I don't ration in my rational mind. I don't think it would come to that. I don't think it would even come close to that, uh, because I think that good leaders on both good leaders around the world can find a way to gracefully allow your enemy to lose. And that's a very important thing, I think, for a very prideful enemy, is to find a graceful way for that enemy to lose and save face somehow. I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to do. I don't know if there's. I'm not well versed in international diplomacy. I don't know if there's a easy way out, a golden bridge, a golden off ramp, so to speak, as Sun Tzu would call it, a golden bridge for your enemies. I think if they start seizing oligarch assets overseas and they start seizing properties, taking houses, taking apartments, taking condos, taking bank accounts, you know, capturing Putin's wallets that are overseas, I think that he will start seriously thinking twice and three times and four times about what he's doing. Um, Even the beautiful Ukrainian women are fighting. I don't doubt that even the ugly ones are fighting. I reckon every single person who knows how to finger a trigger has got a gun and is pointing the pointy end at the bad guys. And what the fuck? It's 2022. Why are the Russians the fucking bad guys? Still. They were the bad guys in the 80s. They were the bad guys in the 80s. Except they were Soviets back then. They weren't Russians. They were Soviets. I mean, what the hell, man? You reboot all the classics, and then, we come back and we have a fresh new Bond villain, resurrected Bond villain. I mean, good God. I mean, I was fine when he was just like a menace, when he was just like a nuisance, sending his little fighters over our warships in the Pacific and in the Atlantic, just like, zoom, there he is. Oh, look, the fucking Russians again. Low gas prices hurts the Russians. We had low gas prices for a very long time, and the price started like ticking back up, and then they started making money off their gas again. I don't guess that's a problem now. They got disconnected from the SWIFT accounts, or the SWIFT system, and they can't use their banks and their money. Sucks to be them. But unfortunately, that doesn't stop tanks. See, that's the thing. I don't know. Okay, so ultimately, he doesn't want Ukraine to join NATO. I don't know if he can come. I don't know if he can make that happen. I mean, he was able to stop Georgia from joining NATO when he literally invaded Georgia. As Georgia was moving towards NATO, he invades Georgia, takes 2 regions from Georgia during the Olympics, while the U.S. president is sitting like 6 seats over from him. The dude's got fucking balls. And then, this was the same plan of the same game plan that he used on Georgia, basically, when he attacked Georgia to stop Georgia from joining NATO. Now there's Russian forces on 20% of Georgia's territory. Georgia's never going to get into NATO and the European Union now. But if his ultimate goal is to prevent, like, best case scenario is he topples the government, installs his puppet, and Ukraine is a puppet state. He's had a puppet government in Ukraine before, and they got overthrown back in 08, 09, 2010, sometime around there during the Orange Revolution, whenever that was, a decade or so ago. They overthrew that guy. He's gone. And they brought in this dude with like 70% of the vote, like a legit election. They're not, lily white, crystal clear. They're not a corruption-free government, but they're more corruption-free than they used to be. They're moving in that direction. And have been for some time, for the last 5, 6, 7 years. But, best case scenario, that would be the best case scenario. I don't even know if that best case scenario would work very well because, last time that happened, it didn't work out so well. But I think there's some like middle ground where they go, okay, we didn't get to install our government, so at least we want them not to join NATO. We can't have them. That seems like the whole thing. They don't want them joining NATO. I don't know if you can put that genie back in the bottle. I think that horse may have left the barn. Can I get another analogy in there? That fish don't swim. That dog don't sit. That bird don't fly. There we go. I got them all. I think I got all the good analogies in there. And in fact, with the invasion of Ukraine, he may have sent 3 more countries into joining NATO. With Finland and Sweden and one other one. I think there was another one that wanted to join NATO. Accelerated application process to get in to NATO. They were like on the fence. Ruble ain't worth shit right now. It's trash. No. Russian gas doesn't have influence on our gas, but oil price. Back when the oil prices were when the oil prices collapsed in the, I guess, late Obama term, sometime in the second term, when gas prices bottomed out and they were laying people off again in the United States, in the gas fields here in the United States, the oil fields here in the United States, that affected Russia's economy because Russia gets a lot of their money from selling oil and gas. And when the price of oil and gas bottomed out, they were hurting. They weren't making as much money. When the gas goes up, Russia benefits, as do uh, other allies, as does Texas. Uh, Texas benefits when gas prices are high. In fact, when gas prices are high, not gas prices, oil prices, when oil prices are high, oil companies can afford to frack and start new wells. When gas prices or oil prices are low, I keep saying gas prices, I mean oil prices. When oil prices are low, they can't afford to keep those wells running here in the United States. They can't afford to dig new wells. They can't afford to do any of that stuff because they don't make enough money off of it. So when the oil prices go up, we open up new wells and it brings the price back down. When those prices go back down, we end up shutting them off. I think the price needs to be somewhere around 50 something dollars in order for us to keep the wells running. It has to be north of $100 to start new ones and north of $50 to keep them going. Once the price goes below 50, they start shutting them down because they don't continue to make money. I don't know if that's still the numbers that they used to be. It might be 60 to keep them running, somewhere in the neighborhood between 50 and 60. I can't remember. Below, low oil prices hurts Russia's economy, as it does Texas's economy. It hurts Texas's economy. Texas and Russia are very similar. We're a petrol state. That's what we are. So yeah, their oil doesn't affect our gas price. Their gas doesn't affect our gas price, but the price of oil affects their economy, just like it affects ours. Uh, uh, Dog don't hunt. That's a good one. That's one that I left off. Um, but yeah, see, I wonder if the whole don't join NATO uh, horse is out of the barn. I, I don't see how they can. I don't see how Russia pulls out. I don't see how Russia gets out of Ukraine and Ukraine doesn't join NATO. I don't see, I don't see a resolution. I don't see a resolution to this conflict that is either Russia 100% out of Ukraine and Ukraine joining NATO, or Russia staying in Ukraine and just giving the finger to the world saying, suck it, what are you going to do about it? You cut us off from SWIFT? Fine. 30% of our banks are still attached to it. Me and my oligarchs will just use crypto or whatever they do. Iran's been cut off from the world banking system for decades. Hasn't bothered them. Well, it's bothered them a little bit, but whatever. The Russia, China, Iran form their own little currency world over there and fuck everybody else. Who cares? Um, I wonder. I mean, I wonder how much. I don't know. I don't know how this ends, and that's that's the trouble. That's the troublesome thing because I don't know how responsive Putin feels like he needs to be to international pressure. Like, what does he give a shit? He doesn't care. I don't. How badly does he want to be back in the G7? How badly does he want to be uh, integrated back with the world's institutions? How badly? You know, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. And that's what's been on my mind. That's what's been bugging me so much lately. Like, how does this? Where do we go from here? Because that, as a systems guy, as a logistics guy, as a systems guy, that's what I think about. We are at point C or D, wherever the hell we're at right now. I know how we got from where we were to where we are. This has been a slow, steady drumbeat for years and years and years. Putin's used the same damn rhetoric that we've heard from other despots. Russian-speaking people, ethnically Russian people, reuniting ethnically Russian people uh, under the same government, within the same borders. That ethno-nationalism. The dissolution of the Soviet Union was the worst catastrophe of the 20th century. Um, he said this several times, and he's worked at tightening his grip on certain countries like Belarus, uh, like Ukraine. And to be fair, Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, they have a shared history. Uh, the Russian Empire started out as a Viking empire that was born on the banks of the Dnieper River and moved north. The Muscovy throne was inherited from the kings in Kiev. They have a shared history. They have a shared ethnicity. Well, to be completely fair, Russia is a offshoot of Ukraine, not the other way around. But yeah, that's parsing. It depends on how you look at history. It's from a certain point of view crap, which is frustrating and annoying. Can't really see that scroll down there at the bottom, can you? That's fine. More isolated with, whoa, what's that say? It has been reported that Putin is more isolated with photos of supposed reasonably recent meetings, other heads of state, his own cabinet, where he's like, oh yeah. But the question is, how much does that matter to him? You know, how integrated does he think the Russian economy needs to be with the rest of the world? How integrated does it need to be with Europe? How integrated does it need to be with, how much does he give a crap about that? I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to know his motivations. It's hard because he doesn't seem to be rational like other leaders. And this, by the way, is one of the dangers that you have when you have a unaccountable, unelected leadership. He doesn't have to worry about the next election. He doesn't have to worry about backlash from his people. He doesn't have to worry about any of that stuff. He can just do things that he thinks is in the best interest of Russia, whether it's in the best interest of Russia or not. So he doesn't have to worry about, his people can starve. He doesn't give a shit. Well, I mean, as long as he doesn't starve, it doesn't care. It doesn't matter if his people starve. It's not like an accountable elected president that if the people hate you, they get you out of office and replace you with somebody else. So it's hard to know his motivations. It's hard to see into I don't know, a 30-second delay. What are you talking about? Uh, Forgetting how many Saddam killed. I'm not forgetting how many Saddam killed. Anyway, um, yeah. So it's hard to know where this goes. I don't, and that's what's most concerning because when you don't know where it ends, and when you have an unaccountable leader who can literally do whatever he wants, and he has literally the most deadly weapons at his disposal. Does he do something irrational? I don't think he would. I think there's still the self preservation. I don't think he would risk a fireball over Moscow. I don't think he would risk that. I I wouldn't, even if I were a completely unaccountable despot. I don't think I'd risk that. But if his oligarchs are fed up with him and done with him, would he risk a knife in the back? That is the end of a bottle. Da, da, da. End of a bottle. So, I mean, we know how we got to where we're at, roughly, vaguely, generally speaking. But I don't know where it goes from here because I don't know entirely. We don't necessarily know where we're at. He's gotten desperate to solidify his legacy as the guy who reunited the Soviet people, which, yep, exactly, which makes sense. Which has been his goal since day one. Yeah, a stated goal. He said this as much. Um, I mean, I don't know. You know, when it comes to the oligarchs, when you start relying on the inner circle to do the work for you, that's when it starts getting. That's when you. I don't know that you're putting uh, policy outcomes and logistical outcomes in the hands of other people, and when you want a job done right, you do it yourself. That sort of thing, hoping for the best. Yeah, that's why Tywin Lannister, didn't leave a whole lot to the imagination. It didn't leave a whole lot to chance. He made sure things got taken care of. The biggest concern, the biggest concerns that I have, I suppose, for the people, obviously of Ukraine, uh, that they have something, left to defend when it's all over. That they have some place to go home to. That they have a that that Putin doesn't take the if I can't have it, nobody else will mentality and attitude. They control the land around Chernobyl. They control the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Uh, I would hate to see sabotage to that thing as part of an end game where we can't have Kiev, we can't have Ukraine. Fine. Have your disgusting radiated world. Pull the cord and blow the thing up. That would be a bad outcome, says Captain Understatement. That would be a cool Captain Understatement. Captain Obvious and Captain Understatement, where Captain Understatement, Captain Obvious states the obvious, and Captain Understatement completely and totally always understates the obvious. My gosh, the sun is hot. Yes, Captain Understatement. We know that it would melt titanium. Dumb idiot. uh, well, see, that's the thing though. If he takes Kiev, Nate says if he takes Kiev with tanks, he doesn't actually win. Um, but see, here's the thing. All he has to do, he can take Kiev, oust the current government, have an election, just like they did in Crimea. Have the election, with Russian troops in all the cities. Have the election. You see, but this also requires taking all the cities, like literally taking over the country, and he hasn't done that. He hasn't taken Kyiv. He hasn't taken Kharkiv. He hasn't taken any of the major population centers yet. It's only been 5 days. That's the thing. It's only been 5 days. European Union is sending planes. Anyway, let me finish the thought. Takes the population centers. They have kills the president, arrest the government leaders. They're all on the most wanted list. They're either out of the country or arrested and tortured and killed, whatever. Then there's the election, just like they did in Crimea. The ballot measure to join Russia as a province of Russia, as a republic, as an autonomous republic in the Russian Federation, and then that's it. That's the end. Of course, there'd be an ongoing insurgency, but the ongoing insurgency would be handed over to the local governor, just like in Chechnya, just like in Grozny, just like what they did in Chechnya. The local insurgency still rages. It doesn't rage. It's a low-level, steady, smoldering insurgency. Handed it over to the government in Grozny. This is your problem. They leveled the city. They rebuilt the city. The oligarch in Grozny is, as long as it doesn't, get out of hand, it doesn't get out of Chechnya, then that's not their problem. Of course, Ukraine is 44 million people, and Chechnya is like something like 35,000 or something like that. Some small number. I have no idea how many people. Hey Siri, what's the population of Chechnya?
In 2021, the population of Chechen Republic was 1,492,992.
1.5 million. The population of Ukraine is 44 million. Live. Come on. Live. There we go. My monitor over here was delayed. So it's obviously not a one-to-one comparison. Chechnya is much, much, much smaller than Ukraine. Ukraine is much, much, much larger. But if there's only, the legitimate government, the recognized government, if there's no legitimate government in the region, if there's no legitimate government in the country, they're not joining NATO. And there you go. They have their installed provincial government. It's occupied by Russia, or at least the capital is occupied by Russia. The government in exile is, whatever. If Zelensky gets out, their government in exile, they're not joining NATO. Then objectives achieved. Then that's what they've done. They've achieved their objectives. They've captured Kiev. They've ousted the government. They've unseated the government and made the government move. They've occupied the capital. They've installed a provincial government. The entire country is under conflict for decades to come. They're not joining NATO. They're not in the EU. Of course, it could invite a full-scale EU counter-invasion in order to root them out. And that would probably not be ideal for Russia. Probably, I would think. Facing a full-scale counterattack from the EU nations. I don't see how that ends well. Yes, the Ukrainians did. The Ukrainians did. They've done it several times. Levenko, the previous president, was ousted twice. He was ousted. He was voted out of office. He was in office and he was defeated. No, he was in office and he won. He won an election against a guy that they poisoned, and he recovered, and he won that election against that dude. And there were so many protests that they forced him to redo the election, and then he lost that election in the revote. And then something. He came back into power, and then as they were moving towards the West, the dude came back into power in another corrupt election, I think it was, and then after 3 or 4 years in power, protests finally ousted. Or no, it wasn't even 3 or 4 years. He was in power for like 6 months, I think, and then they ousted. That was the Orange Revolution. They ousted him out of power the second time too. That's when he started shooting at protesters, and then they had enough, and he had to flee the country and went to Russia. That's when they had the next election, and Volodymyr Zelensky, former talk show host and actor, or comedian and actor. I'm worried, and that's. I'm very, very grateful for what we have going on tomorrow night here in Texas, that we can go out and vote. with relative certainty that our votes will be counted and the election places are secure. And we don't have to worry about any violence or anything like that at the polling places. I'm super grateful for that. I thank my lucky stars. I hit my knees and give thanks for that. Uh, and I'm appreciative that I can take part in that process, uh, and that we don't have this kind of unrest. That we don't have to worry about. We're driving to work and there's tanks on the freeway. We don't have to worry about that. I appreciate that. I thank my lucky stars that we're in this country, that we're in this situation that we're in, and I'm fiercely protective of this situation, which is one of the reasons why I'm so eager and excited to work uh, the elections uh, on the various periods when they come up, at least twice a year. Usually, we have November and March usually, but sometimes there's also May when we have off-period elections. Um, yeah, I know. Captain Ukraine, old Volodymyr Zelensky, is he's a badass dude. He's risen to the challenge. He's done what just about every American president has ever managed to do. And um, I say this with utmost sincerity and truth. Uh, there's a crisis that comes in every single American president's term, whether it's terrorist attack like what happened with George W., whether it's an international event, whether whatever it is. There's always some major event, and it could be relatively major. It doesn't even have to be that major, but it's major for that moment. And you know, uh, for a young John F. Kennedy, it was the Cuban Missile Crisis. For uh, for Carter, I think it was probably the Iranian embassy overthrow. Probably something before that, though. I can't remember. I can't remember Carter's term. I'm not that old. Uh, for Reagan, early on in Reagan's years, he was facing down the Soviet Union. For George the Elder, there was the Berlin Wall, the collapse of the Berlin Wall, and probably something earlier than that. I can't remember exactly that far back in the '90s. For you know, Clinton had his thing, G Dub had his thing, not Biden, Obama came into office in the middle of a financial free fall. Um, every president has had his moment that he's had to stand up and grow into the office and live up to the weight and gravity and scale of the office that he's taken. And that is no different for old old Volodymyr Zelensky over there, Captain Ukraine. If this isn't a situation where a president has been able to step up and grow into office, been given the opportunity to be larger than life and step into not just a physical role, but a uh, symbolic role. He has taken that opportunity and he has stepped into that role and he has become the symbolic leader as well as the actual leader of his people. And that is, it's cool to see. It's really cool to see, and it's impressive to watch. And I wish them the best. I really do. I hope for the best for Ukraine and the people of Ukraine, and I hope that it that ultimately uh, they can hold their ground and that they can hold their ground long enough for the rest of the world to figure out how to come to their aid. I hope that they themselves could hold off Russia, but I think it's too early to start taking victory laps because God only knows how many more troops Russia's going to be able to throw at Ukraine. And to be honest, Russia doesn't even have to win. They just need to disrupt it enough to make it really well to make it something not worth defending. You know, if we can't have it, nobody else can. Um, and turn the whole surface to glass. Um, it's really, I mean, it's really cool. There's only been one occasion in my memory where we've found and it's not just for the president of the United States. It's for any job, really. You get hired for a job, and there comes a point where you have to live up to, you fit into the role of the job, and there's always some kind of inflection point in anyone's job where you grow into that role and you realize that, okay, this is the types of decisions we have to make. When I was a trust officer, it was the first time that happened was when somebody called up and they were asking for a withdrawal of funds from the account that was counter to what, it was the first time that I had to stand up and this is a chicken shit example, but it was the first time I had to stand up and make a decision counter to what the client wanted. I had to stand up and make a principled decision on behalf of my role as the trust officer. Um, as an adult grown up head of my household, it was when I had to bury my first animal. That was before we had kids, so I wasn't a dad yet. But my dad's job was always to bury the animals. And when we had our first pet die, I had to go dig the hole myself. And when I went and dug the hole, I remember thinking, like, this is what grown-ups do. I was in my excuse me. Excuse me. I was in my early 20s. And there's a point in college and a point as a young adult where you need stuff. You can still go to your parents. You can do all these things. But hey, Vanessa Kitty. But when my first cat died and I had to go dig a hole and bury my cat, that was the first time that was the first time that I remember thinking to myself, this is something that I have to do myself. I have to. This is the first time that I had and I think I'd already bought a car and I'd already got an apartment and I'd already done grown up stuff, but it was like grown up stuff that all grown ups do. But like this is the thing. This is the thing that my dad, I don't have nobody else can do this. This is me. This was my moment of growing into the responsibility of an adult, a head of household, being a grown up. Um, and that's probably the stupidest analogy, the stupidest, worstest parallel of me having to bury a cat and Volodymyr Zelensky standing up and grabbing a gun and saying, "Okay, we're going to do this thing. Let's go, boys." Uh, but that's kind of the point. You grow into that role as an individual, and the job is bigger than you. Nobody is qualified to be president. Nobody is qualified to be president. Other than there's constitutional qualifications for the United States. It's to be born in this country. Uh, you're a natural citizen. You're, I think, 40 years old, and I think those are the only two qualifications to be president of the United States. And you are qualified if you meet those criteria, and that's it. Nobody, nobody is qualified to take on the decisions, the weight of the decisions, the uh, the speed of the decisions, the scale and size of the bureaucracy. That nobody's qualified for that. Absolutely nobody, save one person, and that one person is the person who's already president. Even former presidents, having left office, are less qualified than the current occupant. Because things change, circumstances change. They may more easily slide into that role, but Um, they may more easily slide into that role, but the role has changed since they left office. So nobody is qualified to be president, and you can once you get into that role, you either grow into the role and uh, become the office, or you don't. And there's only been one occasion in my lifetime that I can cite that a president has been. Yeah, I'm sure all around the world there's obviously corrupt presidents who uh, are not have not grown into the role. Of course, in other countries the role is not as big as the role is here. In very few places has the role carried as much gravity as the role that Zelensky is in right now. Uh, and bravo to him for uh, growing into that role. It's some people have the depth of character to be able to do that, and um, some people don't. And I can only think of one occasion. I'm too young to remember presidents before Reagan, but I can only think of one occasion that it hasn't happened. But uh, cheers to Zelensky for doing it. I mean, it's not. I assume it's not a very easy thing to do. You have to get the right mindset and be able to do it. Uh, he, I mean, he's impressed the hell out of me. And the Klitschko brothers, I mean, the whole narrative is full of Ukrainian heroes. Um, from the Snake Island guys to the guy who blew up the bridge to the Ghost of Kiev to the grandma to the to I assume she's a grandma. I don't know. Um, to all the people who are making Molotov cocktails, to the people who are getting up and going into the bomb shelters and then coming back out and just living their daily life, knowing full well that there's a column of tanks that's 40 miles long right outside the city. We've never had to live under that kind of stress. We've never even had to conceive that kind of stress. We've lived our lives here that it's just, yeah, I mean, we've never even had to fathom the reality that they face in some other places. And it just impresses the hell out of me. It absolutely does. And I wish there was a way we could do more. Uh, other than, fight like hell to protect what we have. Uh, I wish there was a way that we could do more uh, beyond pressuring our own representatives to uh, be more responsible and more responsive to uh, freely elected liberal democracies around the world, to be less responsive and less accommodating to authoritarian regimes and dictators, uh, to be more interested in energy independence beyond fossil fuels so that we wouldn't be propping up petrol states like Russia and Saudi Arabia and places like that. We could be more dependent on our own energy. Uh, Outside of fossil fuels, a great way to do that is to generate energy that doesn't require fossil fuels. I wish there was a way that we could uh, undo a lot of the harm that's been done over the last 25 to 30 years that has brought somebody like Putin to the place where he's at today, completely and totally working to dismantle a freely elected liberal democracy on the doorstep of Europe. Um, Unfortunately, there's no such thing as time machines, but we can work starting today for the next 25 years or so to make sure that it doesn't, that in 25 years we're not saying the same thing, that we wish we could go back 25 years to undo the harm that's been done, that's brought the next despot to the door of a freely elected liberal democracy on the doorstep of uh, on the doorsteps of Europe, uh, threatening to remove a country from the roster of countries. Because that's basically what they're doing. They're threatening to remove a country from the roster of countries and making them, they've declared it, they're a colony of Russia. They're a province, a colony of Russia. Um, but, you know, if you wish in one hand and shit in the other, only one of them's going to get filled. Um, so that's where we're at. We need to, I think that's what we need to do. We just need to work like hell over the next 25 years to make sure this doesn't happen again. No, I fully expect Putin will get his. Guys like Putin don't, well, I'd like to say guys like Putin don't die at an old age, but Stalin died at an old age. So did Lenin. And Stalin was very much a guy like Putin. But, well, here's one thing that gives me hope. The Western powers did not want to get involved in Libya's civil war until Libyan forces were besieging a city. Which city was it? Can't remember. They were besieging a city and they were threatening to level basically level civilian casualties in the hundreds of thousands. And that's when Obama and it wasn't Macron at the time, it was the previous French president. He said, let's do it. And French warships or French air jets unleashed the first bombs. American jets were right behind them. British jets were right behind them. Took out as much of the Libyan army as they possibly could on the roads heading to that city. God, what was that city? I think it started with a B. It'll come to me in about an hour, I'm sure. But that's what brought them into. That's what brought the Western powers into the Libyan civil war. We're like, look, y'all can fight all the wars you want, but you fight amongst yourselves, put your forces against each other, but you're not going to take out the hundreds of thousands of civilians as you do it. So, you know, if you have a giant column of armored vehicles 40 miles long outside of the borders of Kiev, and they're threatening to surround the city and take thousands and hundreds of thousands of civilian casualties, I'm pretty sure that'll bring in the American gunships and the European gunships, and they're going to start physically taking out it was really making my voice sound sexy and deep, isn't it? Hello, baby. How you doing? Sexy guys and dogs. Yeah. Listening to KBBL. But, you know, if things are looking exceptionally dire for the Ukrainian people, I don't think the West is going to let Ukraine fall. If it starts looking exceptionally dire, if we start seeing if you know, Ukraine starts to slip, if we start seeing indiscriminate bombings and indiscriminate, I think that'll bring the West in, or at least the very least Western air power. It may not bring Western boots, but Western jets. And if it brings Western jets in and it neutralizes the air power, the air superiority, which Russia has not been able to establish, neutralizes Russian air power and starts taking out ground forces, then I think we will. Then this thing will come to a real swift end. But I don't know. I don't know. It was therapeutic to at least be able to talk about it and voice it out loud, concerns and things, to be able to say it out loud, because I can't talk to my kids about it. They don't know shit. I can talk to my lovely wife about it, but I mean, neither one of us are really. You know, she works all day. I listen to the news. She doesn't. I listen to the news when I work. She doesn't really. She's not really that closely plugged in. But it's therapeutic to be able to talk about it. I appreciate y'all at least taking the opportunity to listen to me ramble and babble, and at least indulge me as a non-expert in these things. I do think that this will be, I think that the world leadership that we have in place, the European leadership, the American leadership, I believe that this will be brought in to a to a stable and comfortable landing. I think this will be guided into a good place that is uh, beneficial to the West and Ukraine. I wouldn't have said that 3 years ago, but I think that we have competent leadership that can bring this into a stable landing, and I think that ultimately the net result of this is going to be uh, Ukraine pushing. I'm gonna make my call. I'm gonna make the call. If I were in the prediction business, this is the prediction I'm gonna make. Ukraine will push Russia to a stalemate, and then they'll be invited. They'll be expedited into the European Union, and then ultimately Russia will be given an under the table back channel ultimatum that they need to clear out or face American troops as American, European, as NATO troops move in to stabilize, or as European Union, I'm sorry, not NATO, European Union troops move in to stabilize the Ukrainian situation on the EU frontier. Uh, and Russia will be told that if they counterattack, that's going to bring in NATO because they'll be attacking European allies, which will trigger Clause 5, Article 5 of the NATO alliance. So I think that's probably how this ultimately goes. We've got more cards in our deck, is what I'm saying. If Ukraine joins the EU, EU forces go into Ukraine, and then that puts NATO forces at risk to being attacked by Russian forces. And if NATO forces get attacked by Russian forces, that brings in the American Air Force. And then Russia's fucked. They're super fucked. They're super fucked. And by super fucked, I mean like with one of those like redwood dildos, the giant ones that are like, you got like 3 people, 6 people, 12 people, and they're touching arms, standing around that thing. That's enough to rearrange your guts. Uh, and I think that's probably the end game of how this ultimately goes away. Uh, Russia remains a pariah state, although they would be reconnected to the banking system. Uh, Oligarch assets would be seized, but not all of them. I mean, Putin will basically take probably a 30% hickey on his net worth. Uh, I do not see any scenario. I do not see any scenario where it ends with Russia controlling Ukraine, or the Ukrainian government. I don't see a scenario where that happens. Uh, and maybe it's because I'm overly optimistic. That's entirely possible. Maybe it's because I'm overly optimistic. Maybe it's because I always see the glass half full. But I do not see a scenario where it plays out that way. The Ukrainian people don't want it. The Western world doesn't want it. The only people that want it are Russia and Belarus. So, and maybe China. Uh, and we absolutely wouldn't allow it because uh, annexing a sovereign state is what China wants to do with Taiwan. And I don't see how that happens. I don't see how it plays out that way. Um, and if I were in the prediction game, that's what I would predict. That's I just don't know. I don't know how we get there from here. I don't know how we get there from here because there's going to be a lot of dark nights in Ukraine between now and then, and hopefully they will result in very bright mornings. And a glorious sunrise, and glory to Ukraine, and hopefully, uh, more than thoughts and prayers are coming their way uh, to make the to make their tomorrows brighter. So that's it for tonight, guys. We're done. I appreciate y'all hanging out. I appreciate y'all giving me the chance to talk. I appreciate being your bartender and chatting it out with you. And giving me the chance to talk to y'all and y'all a chance to talk to me. It's been fun. It's been a good happy hour. I appreciate it. Glory to the great tuna empire, indeed. Glory to the great tuna empire. Glory to Ukraine. Uh, keep the faith, guys. Love with your whole heart and be awesome to each other. Cheers and good night. Where's my cursor? There it is. Good night. Bye.